I am Aishi Dholakia, your host for this morning, and we are here at Mumbai International Film Festival for an inspiring session that will delve into how short films can be a powerful medium for social change. We extend our gratitude to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, the National Film Development Corporation, and the Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute, Kolkata. We are honored to have with us Mr. Nemil Shah, a prodigious artist from Jamnagar, India. At just 24 years of age, Mr. Nemil Sir has already made a significant wave in the film industry with his debut short film, Dal Bhat, which won various accolades including the National Film Award and was an official entry to the Oscars. With his first feature film on the horizon, Sir also represents the next generation of filmmakers who are not just creating art but also empowering change. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming with a round of applause Mr. Nemil Shah, whose artistic endeavors have amplified voices and narratives to the medium of film. With regard to the question and answers, we will take all the questions from the audience at the end of the session. And I would now request Mr. D. Ramakrishnan Sir, General Manager, National Film Development Corporation, to felicitate our guest. And may I now request Mr. Nemil Sir to share his journey and insights on amplifying impact through short films. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, talking about films, short films, it takes me back to why you start creating. And that's where I think all these big words, I think impact and amplifying change. Yeah, I mean these words come from there, I think. So I think it's very important to understand why in the first place you start creating. You want to create something. And for me especially, where I come from, it goes, for example, to art. And you start creating at a young age. You start drawing whatever comes to your mind. You start painting. You start to speak up in some melodious voice, which eventually turns into music. So that's how it all starts. And then when you grow older, when you are in touch with so many visuals and audios, with films, games, and so many things, I think it helps you to grow, and it helps you to understand why you want to create something. And I specifically want to emphasize on actually games, video games, board games, any games. And I think because when we see all kind of animals that ever existed, and this is like not my understanding of it, but from a collective understanding from a lot of people around me and a lot of other masters from the world of art, is because, I mean, when you see animals, all the animals when they are cubs, for example lions, they always try to imitate life by playing games. So they are always, for example, a lioness would always teach the cubs how to kill, and it would be a demo kill. So it's a mock of life in a way. So I think that's where games and these sort of things are very important, because that's how you understand how you can live your life without any sort of stakes, because in life you would not be able to make those mistakes which you can in the games. So I think those are very great creations, and why I start off with with games is because it helps you to build your understanding for your own creations later on in your life. And that's how I also started understanding life more, and with games later on I was more in touch with other forms of art. And yeah, I mean, I really think it's more important to understand life, and then that's how you lead on to understanding creations and arts. So from there, when you understand those things, where you come from, it becomes much more easier for you to realize what you want to create. And that's all it is, because once you understand what you want to create, you just have to create to, you know, make any changes or, you know, leave any impact. So I think that's all it has to do with this session here, because it's more about understanding what you want to do. It may be different for different people. For example, for him it would be some sort of music, but he would end up creating also visuals with it, and that's how, you know, he will create his films or his art combining those two things. And yeah, once you understand those things, that is the main and most important thing. Then everything is done. Then just what you need to focus on is to apply those and do those things. Because if you just keep it in your brains, you might have, you know, lots of films, short films, or you know, any other piece of art. But if you just keep it here, it's not going to do anything for you. So yeah, once you start understanding that, you get on to creating, and I think that's the most important thing. And you know, I actually have one very good excerpt from Mr. Werner Herzog. I don't know, I mean, a lot of people might have watched his films, but he always says one thing, and which I always say to myself, and also to people who are, you know, always sometimes facing difficulties in creating sometimes. So he says, the best advice I can offer to those heading into the world of film is not to wait for the system to finance your projects and for others to decide your fate. If you can't afford to make $1 million film, raise $10,000 and produce it yourself. That's all you need to make a feature film these days. Beware of useless bottom rung secretarial jobs in film production companies. Instead, so long as you are able-bodied, head out to where the real world is. Roll up your sleeves and work as a bouncer in a sex club, or a warden in a lunatic asylum, or a machine operator in a slaughterhouse. Drive a taxi for 6 months and you'll have enough money to make a film. So, I mean, this is where it all sort of comes from. Once you understand what you want to create, and then what do? You just go and create it. And that's how you can make impact. And when we talk about then short films specifically, most people here want to make films, and that's why they think short films is a first step for it. And I think during our conversations before this session with the SRFTI team, and there was a very beautiful question arose from that session, that is it only short films are only made for making a feature film eventually, or is it also a form of art or films? And if you just see a lot of filmmakers, they don't just make feature films, but they would have made hundreds of short films, like Stan Brakaj, and I remember that session with this team, and I was also I then eventually got to know a lot of filmmakers who also make short films other than stunt. So I think it's very important to understand what you want to create. It might not be a feature film idea. What you want to create might not be a feature film thing, and something that is very close to you might be very short. So I think that's a very important thing to understand, to be able to focus on that is the most important thing. Rather than just okay, because everyone makes a feature film, you don't have to. And I realized this thing also not just with feature films. You might take any visual or any audio or any other sensory element, right? I mean, what we humans, how do we perceive? We perceive through our sense organs, which are 5 sense organs, and whatever we perceive is eventually art, right? I mean, film is 2 mediums, right? Visual and audio. So you are essentially impacting those two organs of the audiences. So you necessarily not have to you can take things from different art forms and different places. That's how also film came to existence, right? With music already existed, right? Photography already existed, but then it evolved, and people started connecting those things based on how they wanted to represent life, and they wanted to portray life to other people through their form of art. So I think it's not important for you to focus on short films as just a step to make a feature film eventually. It could be anything, and I think to also sort of tag it as a feature film or a short film is also not necessarily. It could be a film. We can just call it a film rather, right? And that makes you more aware of your own art, own self, and what you want to create, rather than focusing on things कि ये 50 मिनट के ऊपर की ही होनी चाहिए तो फीचर फिल्म में क्वालिफाई करके you will go to this for XYZ festival, or maybe if you are exceeding 30-minute mark, you won't be able to apply anywhere, because no festival will take you, because 30 minutes and के नीचे short films are considered, and above 50 feature films are most of the festivals. So I think that also sort of brings you down to do something within those restricted time frames. But if you focus just on what you want to create and what you want to do, I think you'll go away from those binary and menial things, because you then focus on what you actually want to create, right? And that's where you can focus on the right things. So yeah, I mean, it's really important to understand that, and then start creating things. One other thing that I really try to do is to, because I think most of the young people trying to create art, the problem they face is, for example, with films especially, because it's an expensive medium. For you to understand the finances only, it takes a lot of time, and with that fear, with that sort of because you always see that huge amount of money that goes into creating. But I think it's very important, even if you have like very small budget, you can create great things. I mean, we have our phones these days, and they do most of the visual things. So I would also like to, this is how I break into things. I break into 20-20-50 ratio, where if I have like 100 rupees, I would spend 50 on my sound, which will go onto my post. And you always have your phones, mobile phones, for visuals. Those are more than enough to do anything these days. So yeah, 20 would be your production. You would spend it on your, most of the times you won't spend any money on your cast and crew, because when you're starting up with making films in a very menial budget. But so 20, you spend it on your production cost, which would be food, travel, etc. 20 other you spend it for visuals. You might need some lenses or something to attach with your phone or something like that. And then 50 I will spend it on my sound, because if my sound is sorted, I think then you can do it anywhere and any place in the world. even if you you know, showcase it at a place where there is not great sound, still you will be able to portray what you want to convey very beautifully and easily. So 50 is for the sound. Out of that 50, I break it down to 40 which I spend in post for sound and 10 for the equipments. You can, you know, get very basic minimum equipments for very cheap prices. And then, you know, you always know how to convince people to you know, you have to bring together people based on your ideas and things like that, what you feel like. And that's how you know, you'll eventually make films. So I think it's very important to understand these ratios, for me at least. I mean, people might have different ways to look at it, but I thought it was very important because I have faced that. Because when you have, you've written it, you've done all those things, and when it comes to producing it, you might not find any producers, you might not find anyone who would help you to make this film, but you want to create it. So how do you do that? You know, save money from, and with Werner Herzog, he always helps me to you know, understand and, you know, be on that right track. So yeah, this ratio has always helped me with all my minimal of minimal things that I do, and I create for myself, for fun also, a lot of times. So yeah, it really helps, and I would more emphasize on it later. I mean, can we play the short clip that we have here? So we'll play something now. It is just some experimental short that I created for this session from various of my other works, and we'll come to what I was speaking after that. I think we can play that.
Thăm mêจมูกแล้วถึงขยับเวลาเราหายใจ กินน้ำพอหรือยัง
So I specifically made this short for this session, and I made it why, because I want to emphasize on a thing, because I did not have any fun to make this short. I did not. I mean, it was not the festival or NFDC that was providing any fund for this session, right? I did not. I did not have any reason to make this, except for the one that I had to make this, because if I'm emphasizing on something which I myself want to create, it might not be something that people would enjoy, or people have to enjoy or have to appreciate or do anything about it, but it's about me, because I want to create, I would eventually create it. And I wanted to do this because, again, why I want to emphasize again on this thing is because I want to show the things that I already spoke about until now. I want to make sure that you understand through this short, right? I did not have any actor, so usually with visuals and audio, or with film, you can only empathize with any character or any human or any humanness that is attached with the film. So I did not have any actor because I did not want to make it, make it big financially and otherwise, right? So how do I make it humanness? How do I bring this human thing? I always have sound for it, right? You can do this, I mean, sitting in your computers at home, and you can build on small details. And once you build those things, I mean, I don't think there is great acoustics in this room, because this is not for film showcase, right? This room is not for film showcase, but still you will have enough sound material for audiences to understand and feel what you intend to show. So when you focus on sound, when you emphasize on sound, you don't need money, you don't need a lot of things to create something, and eventually that creates an impact. And that is why we are here today, to understand how we can create. And if we can create what we want to, eventually we will make that impact. So second thing with this sound, I mean, I spent max I think 10,000 rupees on this to make this happen. Again, similarly, I specifically had to then spend exact amount so that I can show it to you in that ratio and how I could fit into that ratio, right? I just hired, I mean, a couple of my friends. I mean, I did not hire them because I did not pay them, but they have these sound studios, right? And for that, within just 1 hour of doing some basic sort of mixing and mixing, you can achieve a certain sort of stereo mix that you can do, and which is the most important thing. So I've spent 5,000 on that. I created sound by myself with the help of my friends on my computer. Spent maybe 2,000 on some phone lenses that you can rent it out from any place. And then because when we were there with my friends, you would treat them, because that's how you can, at least you will give them those elements to, I mean, food, travel, basic things, right? So in that amount, you can create something that you want to create. So you don't need lakhs of rupees as people would say, to make films. You don't need, I mean, earlier it was true, because then there were no mobile phones or digital cameras. There is a huge cost that is attached with capturing light through films. But now, in these days, when we have these simple devices, which we all have, so I mean, if you want to create, again, coming to the same point, if you want to create, if you feel like showcasing something to people, or just to understand for myself, for me, it is about understanding, through my art, I always try to understand what I want to create, or it is some sort of a exploration to understand life. And that's what I did with this. So yeah, I mean, the most simple things can create biggest of the impacts. And once you understand that, once you understand yourself and what you want to create, I think that's it. You don't need anything else after that. So yeah, I mean, with this short, also what I tried to do was to mix some of my other works or other things that I did already. So it's also about combining things from things that you already have. For example, some shots that I already had in my phone, which were shot, when I was traveling. So I could take those things. You can always take things from somewhere, and it's not. It's not. Even if I take it from someone else, it's me who's portraying those elements in my way of understanding. So yeah, I mean, it's really important to understand these basic fundamentals. Uh, you don't focus on how long you want to make or how big you want to create. You just focus on what you want to create. Don't focus on the time, duration, or money, or anything which is not creative. That's how I try to break down things. And yeah, I mean, if and we can start some sort of an open conversation, because I don't want to keep it with that. If someone has any sort of question or certain things, we can always start and converse about it, and that's how we will also maybe understand more deeply as to what I'm trying to focus upon. And yeah.
Actually, I have got two questions for you. The first one is, tell me something about the installation art you have made in the Amazon rainforest. And the second one is, how do you work with a sound guy, because when I make films, I find it easier to communicate with my cinematographer, because I can give a pinpoint instructions, but in sound, I cannot, tell the sound. I just simply cannot tell this kind of sound I want, this texture of sound I want.
Thank you. So I cannot tell this certain kind of textures I want in my sound, or this, maybe in the mix I can tell that I want this pan or this shift, something like that. But while designing the sound, it's very hard for me to communicate with the sound guy. So how do you look this part of the filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I started off with, because I think sound is the most important element, especially when you are creating all by yourself. You don't have a lot of elements to play around with. I mean, I would like to address the second question first, because that deals with the session that we are doing. So I mean, it's firstly, I think it's about hearing yourself. Once you start hearing things, just now you are here at this place, you might be hearing certain things. There's some small AC leak that is happening above me, so I can listen to that. And I've been constantly hearing that. So it's in my mind now, because I'm conscious and I'm aware of those things. There might be some people whispering around when they are, passing through, some footsteps, a lot of things, even though this is a comparatively sound controlled place, right? So, but still, if you are aware of things, if you start realizing what kind of sounds are present in this particular place, and whenever you shoot, I mean, in that particular place also, if you are shooting at live location, then it is much more easier, because then you can be aware at that particular location and aware of the sounds that are present there, which really helps you to then build on those elements later on, because most of the times you won't have enough time and funds to capture those while you are there, but you can always reproduce it, right? So I think that's a very important thing, to be aware of the sounds around you, so that you can build on them and build something in line with the narrative that or anything. I mean, it's not just narrative, but yeah, and that's how you build it. And other thing I think you rightly mentioned is to communicate with with your peers, and that's the most important thing. And that's also
The sound guy, the sound guy.
yes,
and
yes,
what
yes,
to do.
yes. That's the most important thing with everyone. I mean, a lot of times you have a lot of things in your head, but it's very difficult to communicate, and that's why also you write scripts, right? So that everyone understands a lot of things. So while you start observing these things, it is very important to apply those elements while while you are even conceiving the idea of it. So if you know you understand, you always write visually, right? I'm assuming, right? But with that, if you add those elements of sound while you're conceiving or writing, or at that early stage, it becomes a part of it all, right? So yeah, I mean, it's more about, when we particularly talk about short films here, it's actually about sound, and that's why I emphasize more and more on sound, because it's like, it's audio and visual, right? 50-50 to hai, so 50 to anyways you have to give it to sound. And so it's always about, you be more aware of that, and it will eventually turn out into what you want to portray and convey. Because a lot of times also what happens is, you don't have that liberty and luxury to shoot it visually, a lot of things. But then you can create those things in sound for a lot, less. I mean, it's not about just that, but you need to understand if that is something that you want to do also. You can't just do that all the time. But yeah, I mean, it's, once you start taking in those things and elements and try to write it down from that very level where you write your visuals down. You also add your sound notes and things like that on your script level, and I think that's the most convenient and important part.
That's the point. I was saying that it's very hard to express sound verbally,
Yeah.
by words. It's easier to write things in
Of course.
of the actors, of the visuals I want to create, of the camera movements I want to see. But in sound, it's really hard to describe it in the words, in
Yeah.
verbally.
It is hard. It is like, you did not choose an easy life by making films. So you have to understand. This is the only way. You keep observing things. Then you, at the idea level, when you are thinking about your visuals in the very first place, you also put in your sound notes. You try to just be aware of these elements whenever you are there. I mean, like I said, you're sitting here, you're not filming anything, but if you are aware of if you open your ears to, things, you will always hear things. It's about, so ears are the only organs, right, where you have a lot of things in your control. For example, with your eyes, you can focus on certain things. You can choose to see, look here, because it's just this vision that you have. But with your ears, it's always open. So it's up to you what you want to listen to and what you want to emphasize onto, right? So yeah, open your ears, listen to a lot of things, and try to articulate that with the at the idea level. And that's how you then later on, it would be easier to communicate with your sound person later on, right? Because once you have already sorted it in at a very pre-level, where you understand what sounds that you need, and you try to articulate that, okay, this is the sound of a leak in the AC that I'm listening now. So if in the narrative it is leak, for example, if you are doing some maybe action sequence where you plan on to show this sort of a blast or something, if this sound is already there from the beginning, it just sets you up for the payoff later, right? That is the setup payoff that you can play with. You might not need to show those bombs or anything, right? But if you just have this sound, it pays off later. So if you're aware of these sounds, then only you can do this. I mean, then I'm able to now articulate it much more. This is the sound I'm listening. This is the reason I want that sound to be there. And how you find same things with visuals, you have to focus on that audio.
So when you design your own sounds on your home, at your desktop or your laptop, you can find sample sounds online, but you cannot foley at home. So how do you go about that?
you can always do that at home. You can record it in your phone, and then you have a lot of softwares and plugins that you can, clean up your sounds and turn it into any different sound. I mean, that's a conversation for a lot. I mean, it can go on for a long period of time.
And for the first question I asked you that about your installation in Amazon Forest, I was quite intrigued by that.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we can also, because we don't have a lot of time, but yeah, I'll just brief you about it. It was an video order installation. So it's not with sound, it's visuals and your nose that are affected in those installations, where we the odors from that forest, from the rainforest, we recreate those odors and present it with that installation. So yeah, I mean, it's about that. But again, there we eliminate sound, because again, that's the most important thing, because visuals, we are very used to look at visuals with sound always, right? So your ears are tuned for that. And once you look at any visuals, right? I mean, it's not just films, it's also your mobile phones, your video games, your computer, everything. It's with the sound and video all the time. So we eliminate the sound and we create odor instead of sound. So once you are there in that particular space, your ears automatically look for sound. They try to find sound because the video doesn't have audio with it. It essentially has an odor and temperature. I mean, there are a lot of other essential things with that. But it's also, again, to focus on sound. And for me, I mean, it's very, I love sound. I mean, that is how I sort of got into films. Not with the visuals that I wanted to create, but with a lot of sounds that I could create otherwise. I mean, it not necessarily needs to be musical, and I used to fight a lot with my music teacher because I always thought of sound not as music but non-music. Rhythm, I try to go off rhythm. I enjoy that. So I used to always fight with my music teacher about not being musical, and if that at all is a thing. And that I think I could achieve with films, because you have that liberty to not follow the traditional audio things that we used to listen for so long, because then you have to be rhythmic, you have to be in the notes that you have right in front of you. So yeah, that is my sort of reason for getting into films. But yeah, that's how I feel. It's not only because of a financial or constraint that I prefer sound over this, but of course for beginning it is also very much needed, because that is when you sort of start creating yourself where you don't have resources. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I was also I was a part of a film, Whispers of Fire and Water, which was in Locarno last year, and it is about a guy who is a sound installation artist. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Then moving on, I mean, once you, then the later stage, what comes in most of us, or most of people who start to make a short film, once you've created it already, then what do you do with it? I mean, that is again a very important question to ask, right? Most of the times we always create, I mean, most of the people always create for someone else to watch it. But for short films, unfortunately, people don't find those avenues on mediums to reach where it's supposed to reach, right? You don't essentially find audiences. For that, I mean, because that's how I started this session with understanding how you want to create. Then you just create. I mean, I can't tell you in detail in this session about how and what are the technical things or how we can create. But once you've created it, what do you do with it? So in that ratio, I gave you 50-20-20 ratio, right? I mean, the 10 that is remaining, I always keep it. Certainly, at this point, a lot of film festivals are the go-to places for people to then reach their audiences. So, but I think it's very important to plan those festivals also, because all the festivals have different sort of criteria. And firstly, the first important thing, the main important thing is to see the eligibility. If you're not eligible for a festival based on dates or duration or anything, you can't, go ahead from there. I mean, you should not even apply. And I think MIFF team will tell you, like, they would receive so many entries which don't even match those criterias, and then you can't reach where you want to reach. So I think it's very important to plan, certainly. First the eligibility, then you have to see if the film that you've created would fit into their criterias of evaluating, and based on the history of the festivals and a lot of things that you can understand with, you have to research a lot, basically. That's how you plan it for the festivals. Again, I don't want to point on that particular thing, because I don't think it is just the festivals that would help you to grow, because you might be rejected from one festival, but that doesn't mean that your film is not good enough, or it's not there. I mean, you need to understand what your audience would be and how you can go to reach your audience if you have to. So I think then you can also sort of try, and with, I think, YouTube and so many social platforms that we have, I think the best way is to put it out all the time. And more, I mean, when I talk about 10, the ratio of 10, it's also about the time. You don't spend that much amount of time just to find or to get into a certain festival, because that doesn't help you also, right? I mean, you need to spend more time creating than planning how you will be able to put it forward. If you keep creating, eventually you will reach certain place where you will be recognized with some festivals, because then also what will happen is you will polish on your certain things and elements that you want to, that maybe, I mean, you will evolve, right? The more you create, the more you evolve. So, because I mean, in all the other art forms, you do your riyaz, right? You practice for hours, you play your tabla for hours, you paint for hours every day. That's how you can create later, right? But in film, how do you do? Because it's a resource driven thing. So I think it's really important to still riyaz with that. So that, how do you riyaz? You riyaz like this. You keep creating with small resources that you have. This was my riyaz, right? I mean, I did this. I got to learn a lot of things. I evolved as an artist, which I am grateful for myself. If that time I would have spent in sending my previous film into festivals and doing those things, I cannot grow. And that's when other designations in films are very important, right? I mean, producers and other people that come on to things. But once you're creating, when you are solo creating yourself, you won't have those luxuries and people to help you or guide you. But if you keep creating with small things, eventually you will reach to a certain place where something will find its own way, where you will be able to get those resources to make your next thing, which is at a better in a better place. So yeah, I mean, not focusing only on film festivals. I think of course you need to also understand and also send it to festivals to understand where you are in terms of your films and art. But again, as I mentioned, social platforms, and you can take all the opportunities that you get to showcase your films. You can, what I used to do is I used to contact my school. Okay, I'm your alumni. I just want to showcase my film at the annual day. So you find your audience. Then that's how you can reach to an audience. For me personally, I never create for others or for a particular kind of an audience, but for myself. This is my journey of understanding myself and exploring myself. But with the short films, it was important because there were a lot of other people also associated. So not everyone will have the same goal and same desire as you. So they would want their films to, who are also part of your film, they would want them to be shown in different places. And with that, eventually you find a lot of people. You get to your audiences any which ways. I mean, it is not just the festivals or social, or you find your own ways. You have to think out of the box to able to reach there. So I think that's very important. You don't spend a lot of time. Take all the opportunities that you get to showcase your shorts or anything that you make. Show it to your families, and I used to do also with my installations. I used to create it just for my families every day at certain time of the day, where people would come. This is also then I also plan my finances that way in the film, because I keep that 20 for them showcase in that certain way. So yeah, I mean, all in all, what I mean to say is to focus on the sound at every point, in every stage of when you are making a short film. Don't focus on the duration. Just focus on what you want to create and keep creating. Keep creating. Riyaz is, I think, very important. I mean, if you even ask any cricketer, you have to play in the nets. How much ever you play in the nets, it doesn't help you. You have to also have your match practices before your matches, right? And how do you do that? With an expensive art form, you have to find your ways, and Warner Rajok always helps. So yeah, if you have any questions, we can open up to.
Thank you, Nemil, for this very interesting conversation. When we were speaking to each other earlier, you spoke about the way you went about research for Dal Bhat.
Yeah.
If you've not spoken about it, would you like to share that anecdote as to how you had a plan, and then you go to your research, and then the story changes and you keep yourself slightly flexible? Thank you.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's really important for me to focus on certain projects as they would want me to require. I mean, as they would require me to do. So the same thing I wouldn't do for any other films. So I think that's why, I mean, I feel it's very important to understand what you want to create. And with that, you always find your own ways. With Dal Bhat, what we had to do is along with my co-writer, we traveled through. It's based in Kutch. It's about a small kid who wants to swim in a lake, but because of the drought, there's no water in the lake, and once it is there, and then there are a lot of other conflicts, and it's a fiction short. So what we had to essentially do for that film is to go there, be there in those places. I mean, I was very fascinated with my grandfather's stories from his childhood. When he grew up in the deserts, they used to go, 5 kilometers, find a well in the hot summers, and they would dive there all day, and sham ko wapas aa jate the, and then someone else would go again to the well, they would go again. So that is the only thing, or the entertainment, or whatever they had to do in their life. So everything was associated with water. And that's how the idea came up in the first place. But for me to live that or relive that was very challenging, because I have not grown in that atmosphere of things, of time, of space. And of course, the film is not based in that time, but it was very important for me to live that moment so that I can create what I wanted to create. So we went on that trip where we found there's this one small village where there are only transgender people living there, and we went there. I mean, we just, when we were traveling, we just happened to be there. But once we were there, we were very fascinated with it, with their lives, with their stories, etc. So we spent a lot of our time there. We lived with them for a few days, and eventually we got a lot of stories that for the film through that experiences that we shared, because how they were outthrown from their communities, how they then happen to live their life that they are living right now. and those elements, then we traveled further and we found a lot of other places where we eventually also shot the film. But that is again, I need to emphasize on games and life and travel a lot more, because that is where you gather those things that you want to create, right? I mean, if you don't travel is also like games for me. I mean, it's fun. It's fun in games. You get to live certain life that you don't live yourself every day, but someone else lives. So I usually try to go and live with other people, and with how they live. For example, for my next feature, it's about people sharing same beds, and it's about factory workers, their lives. So I went there. I was living with them for a while. I mean, it's not to show how good of a person I am to go and live with them. No, I mean, it's not about that, but it's about a change in life, a change in things that you find in things. So that really helps you to, then you are much more aware of life more. I mean, in your daily life, you don't even know, sometimes when you're living in the same room, some things I would understand more in your room than you would yourself, because you always skip those elements. There might be some crack on your wall which you have never seen, but me who's visiting there for the first time, I would always be aware of them. So I will look at those cracks and I will make my understanding of it, and that's how I create, and that's how that whole story happened.
We must say a big thank you to Sir for sharing a very real conversation and for giving us backstory of not only how you made your film, but also sharing few very important points that young filmmakers or aspiring filmmakers should keep in mind. So we express a profound thanks to Mr. Nemil Shah for his inspiring contribution in today's session, and we also acknowledge the National Film Development Corporation for hosting this festival under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and extend a heartfelt thank you to our dearest audience for being there and for engaging. Thank you so much. This is your anchor, Ayushi Dolakia, signing off for the time being.